6 months ago, I put out a video talking about my experience with DEI in the video game industry. This video serves as a follow-up in which I'm going to talk about factors of DEI that I didn't talk about in that first video. Salam, my name is Mustafa. I am a game developer. I currently solo develop and publish indie games. One is currently on Steam, another is in development right now. I have worked in the video game industry. I worked at Treyarch during the development of Black Ops 4. I was doing administration work there, and I worked at Zwift on their indoor cycling game in which I did QA work within the development pipeline. With my past employer, DEI led to me butting heads with management regarding policy that conflicted with my personal and religious views. This company that I worked at had a DEIB department, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. They wanted to update the employee handbook to include these DEI wordings and policies in them. After they updated the employee handbook, everybody was tasked to read the employee handbook and sign off saying that, yes, I have read through the handbook. I can't give you exact quotes of what's in the employee handbook because it's under NDA, but even if I could share the exact quotes, I honestly don't remember the exact quotes because it's literally been years since I worked there. So I'm letting you know that I'm paraphrasing what was in that employee handbook that I disagreed with. There's a section in the employee handbook that discusses how we conduct ourselves on social media. And it banned any sort of discrimination or segregation towards a whole list of different demographics that are listed off. And within the demographics, of course, it listed off sexual orientation as well as gender, and also said ethnicity, race, as well as age. At that time, I was on social media a lot, and I was talking about a lot of things that I'm still promoting right now, such as what a man should do with his role to improve himself and his responsibilities, as well as things that are tied to my religion, Islam. So basically, if somebody saw what I'm posting online, they can report me to my company, and I would get fired because it goes against what that company said were not allowed to do. I discussed this with my supervisor. I said, I'm not going to sign off on this employee handbook. And he was very supportive. He said he understands my viewpoint, and he requested that I write up everything that I told him and send an email to HR as well as the DEIB director as well as the CEO and my director. There's probably some other people I included in the email, but it was basically a bunch of higher ups that I was supposed to let know that I don't agree with what's in the employee handbook. The email I sent them was very lengthy, but to summarize some of the things that I mentioned to them, I said that in my religion, we believe in different rights and responsibilities for men and women, and I gave them examples of rights and responsibilities that a man has, rights and responsibilities that women have. I explained that when we go to the mosque, we have segregation between the two genders. I even included age in there as well because age was one of the things that was listed off in the employee handbook, and that different ages of people have different rights in Islam. In retrospect, I could have also included the fact that age has segregation and discrimination by the law of the United States because certain ages of people, especially kids, are not allowed to do certain things that adults are allowed to do. There's a segregation of keeping kids and adults within certain areas. So segregation by age is something that's implemented in the law of the United States. This specific incident lasted months. I think it lasted around 6 months or so. They sent me a response within a day or two saying, hey, we see your email, we'll get back to you. And then I didn't hear back from them for weeks. I talked to my supervisor. I said, hey, I didn't hear back from them. He said, send them a follow-up email. I sent a follow-up email. HR responded back, basically saying that they're trying to figure out how to respond to me. After months go by, HR eventually tells me, just go ahead and sign saying that you read through the employee handbook because it's not saying I agree to it. It's just saying I read it. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to sign it. I don't agree with this. And I explained to them, I really don't like the wording on this. They acknowledged that the wording was not good, but they told me they weren't going to change the wording. They didn't tell me why they weren't going to change the wording, but I understand why they wouldn't change it, because if they change the wording, then they have to send it out to every employee all over again and say, hey, we need you to read this all over again and sign off on it again. But I was holding my ground and I told them I am not going to sign off on this because I don't agree with this. This concluded when HR finally told me that they're going to file the email thread and keep that as documentation and proof that I read through the employee handbook. They told me not to worry about getting reprimanded or getting punished if I talk about Islam on social media, but that was basically just their way of closing the conversation. They did not want to hear me out. They did not want to make any changes. They were just saying, okay, this guy is not going to agree. Let's just close the case. It was sloppy legal writing. They didn't think it through all the way. They didn't expect anybody to push back on it. And then once they got pushed back, they said, okay, we're just going to close the conversation and move on. During the majority of my stay at this company, we're doing work from home. And in my last video, I discussed how we're doing webinars for DEIB that were optional that people can join in on. One thing that really bugged me about these webinars, as well as just the general language they were using, is that they were redefining words. For example, one that bugged me a lot was how they would use the word community. The way how community has always been used is to describe a group of people who have built a relationship together. The group of people can be within a certain geographic location, such as a neighborhood, a church, a mosque, an actual community center. Typically, it's a group of people who interact with each other regularly. And also, the word community can be used to describe a digital group of people, such as people who hang out together on a Discord server, or a Reddit, or some sort of forum. People who normally talk to each other on a regular basis and have built a relationship together. That's a community. Also, communities usually have some sort of a hierarchy to them as well, such as a neighborhood would have an HOA, or a religious center would have leadership and a certain hierarchy as well. Even digital or online communities have hierarchy, such as one person who's the owner, and then you have admins, and then you have mods, and then you have the people on the bottom. There's usually some sort of a hierarchy when it comes to a community. The way how they describe community is to replace the word demographic or people in general. For example, they would say the Black community, the Jewish community, the LGBTQ plus community. These are not communities. There is no community where they all hang out together. It turns the people into a monolith. It implies groupthink. Like when you say this thing offends this community, who are the council of this community who have decided, yes, this is offensive to us? When they say community like this, it promotes false unity and it takes away your identity. Not all people of said demographic think alike or agree on everything. And one of the underlying issues with this is that once you disagree with what your community thinks, then, oh, you're not a real whatever. You're not a real Muslim. You're not a real Arab. You're not a real Iraqi. You're not a real whatever. Another word they would constantly say is ally, and this really bugged me because this implies that we're at war. The word ally is implying that there is a conflict and that the person is on your side. And if you're not an ally, then what are you? You're an enemy. The workplace shouldn't be promoting allies and enemies. This creates division within the workplace. When someone says, I'm an ally, that's code for I'm one of the good ones. And as I mentioned in my last video, this DEI-based policy doesn't create inclusion or unity. This actually creates division. For a brief period, I actually worked on site in the office at this company. And the company had clear preferential benefits towards women and not men. The office was based in Long Beach, and there was a conference in Long Beach called the Wonder Women Tech Conference. All the female employees would go to this tech conference. Their tickets got paid for by the company. They got the full day off with pay to go to this tech conference. The conference had workshops, lectures, and networking events. It was a professional growth opportunity that was exclusive to women. There was no opportunity for men to go to any conference or workshops or anything. It was only for women. I do know that the women in the company did have other sorts of get-togethers, but I don't know exactly what they're about and what the benefits were. They might argue that the justification is that men are already at the advantage and women need this to catch up. But there's no data that proves this, especially within that company. If anything, the benefit that the women were getting at the company actually shows the opposite, that women have the advantage and not men. There are these employee resource groups, ERGs, which are volunteer DEIB groups. Basically, the company had 4 different DEIB groups: women, LGBTQ+, BIPOC, AAPI. As an Arab and a Muslim, I don't fit into any of those groups because Arabs are considered white and Muslims don't matter because religion doesn't really matter. But I guess since they put plus allies, I can join into any group and say, hey, I'm an ally. I'm one of the good ones. The said purpose of employment resource groups, or ERGs, is for them to make the company feel more inclusive for underrepresented people. Whether it's implementing certain policies, come up with DEI events for those specific groups, maybe mentoring sessions, or hiring specific people. I did not join any ERG, so I don't know how any of those meetings go, but a fundamental problem with the ERGs is that they are volunteer driven. First off, everyone who joins an ERG is attending a meeting about DEI rather than working or doing what they're supposed to be doing. So anyone who goes into these ERG meetings are leaving their work time and they're focusing on DEI during work hours. Not only is it distracting them from their actual jobs, but because it's volunteer driven, fundamentally, the core issue with this is that you can have people in a leadership type role who don't have any actual leadership or management experience. People who are narcissistic and only think about what benefits themselves are advocating for policy change that only benefit them and not thinking about how it affects the company as a whole. ERGs are promoted as this beneficial thing that's going to help the company as a whole. It drains resources by having people not focus on their work. It creates an echo chamber of people who only want to benefit themselves. Plus, it can hurt the company as a whole once they start pushing for policy change that only benefits them and hurts everybody else. When I worked at Treyarch, I mainly didn't see a lot of DEI. First of all, I was a contractor, so a lot of the benefits from Activision didn't affect me. Secondly, I left there in 2019, and that's before a lot of the DEI stuff really started rolling in. But I did see some stuff that I thought were good examples of DEI and not things that created division and chaos. At the time, the Treyarch studio was literally like a block away from Activision, so it was walking distance. And my supervisor asked me if I wanted to attend a Ramadan event that they were holding at Activision. So we went over to Activision and they held this very small event in one of the atriums, and they had this stage with 3 chairs. One Activision employee was being the host of this event. He's a Muslim, and he brought on 3 other Activision employees who are also Muslim. They're sitting on these chairs, and basically he would talk to each one of them and have them share their experience of being Muslim at Activision and what it means to them to be Muslim in the game industry. Personally, I feel like the host did a poor job selecting the people to be on stage. Only one person seemed like he was very excited to talk about his experience. One guy just focused on how he has a rough time being a Muslim because he's gay. And this other woman was basically complaining about how she hates when she needs to explain Islamic things to non-Muslims. That sounds more like a personal problem with her. If she doesn't want to talk about Islam to people who don't understand Islam, then she shouldn't bring it up to people. By the way, she's not wearing a hijab, so nothing about her was apparent that she's Muslim. She just seemed very bitter about explaining Islam to people who don't know anything about Islam. When my supervisor and I were walking back to Treyarch, she apologized to me if I felt uncomfortable whenever she asked me questions about Islam, and I straight up told her, if you have any questions, I encourage you to ask me. I'd rather you ask me than to make assumptions. But aside the fact that I don't think the host did a good job curating who's going to be on stage, I think events like this help people understand different cultures. As long as it's an optional event, you're not forcing people to go, and it's more of an event to say, hey, this is this thing, we want to talk about it so that you can understand what it's about. I think there's plenty of room to celebrate our differences as long as it doesn't get in the way of us acknowledging what we have in common. Building bridges with each other is much more important than just focusing on what's different and building walls between each other. I'm not against diversity, but I am against forced ideology. I hate when they are trying to redefine words and manipulate language. And I am totally against systems that divide us into groups and say, okay, you're of this demographic, you are that monolith, and you have to think like this. That does not unite us at all. The best route to include everybody is to make the primary focus what we have in common rather than what all our differences are. Our differences are fine, but what we have in common is much more important. YouTube has changed up the algorithm and they focus more on views that have engagement. So I'd really appreciate it if you hit the like and leave a comment. Thanks for getting this far in the video. If you want to support the channel, I have links to my games in the description below. You can check out Nexus Defenders and you can wishlist Beware Tomorrow. Thanks, take care, salam.